Hello everyone and welcome to today's session. And today we'll be discussing the theory related to the chapter Organism and Population. Okay, this is the part 2 of the lecture. And in this session, we'll be discussing NCERT section 11.1. This is the disclaimer. Okay, so what are the objectives of today's session? So today we will understand and we will differentiate between exponential and logistic growth models. Okay, so there are two kinds of growth models depending on the availability of the resources. Okay, we'll also talk about their mathematical expression and real world examples. We'll also analyze the concept of carrying capacity, which is represented by the letter K. Okay, so basically carrying capacity is the maximum population size that an environment can sustain indefinitely. Okay, we'll also talk about its role in limiting population growth along with factors that influence population dynamics in natural environments. Okay, so understanding these dynamics help us manage wildlife and conserve ecosystem as well. We'll also compare reproductive strategies. Okay, so some species are semmelparous and some are etioparous. So we'll understand these terms. So these strategies are adaptations to environmental conditions. So we'll talk about these two reproductive strategies as well. Then in the end, we will interpret the population growth curves. We'll talk about the J-shaped and S-shaped curve. Okay. And then we'll also understand how intrinsic rate of natural increase, which is represented by R, affects the population growth patterns. So today we'll be talking about the topic population. Within this topic, we'll be talking about the growth models. Okay, so there are two growth models, exponential growth model and logistic growth model. We'll also talk about the life history variations. Then we'll summarize this entire session. We'll discuss some NCERT-based questions related to these topics. We'll discuss some keynotes. Okay, these keynotes will help you memorize these topics. And in the end, there'll be some interesting questions that will enhance your critical thinking ability. Okay, let's begin with today's session. Let's talk about the growth models. So these growth models help us understand how population change over time. Okay, to think of it like observing a garden where some plants grow quickly while others take some time to grow. Okay, let's talk about the population growth pattern analysis. Okay, so you can see here, first point is study of predictable patterns in population growth over time. So this involves studying predictable patterns in how population grow over time. Okay, so imagine tracking the growth of a city over a decade. So by understanding these patterns, we can make informed predictions about future growth. Okay, next one relates to concerns about human population growth. So as we study these patterns, we can address concerns about our own population impact on resources and the environment. Okay, so population affects resources as well as the environment as well. So Then next one, the aim here is to learn population control lessons from the nature. So nature has its own ways of balancing the populations. And by studying these, we can apply similar principles to human populations. Okay, so we are learning lessons from the nature, how to control, how to manage the population. First, let's talk about the exponential growth. Okay, this is one of the growth model. Okay, this is the fundamental idea in biology that helps us understand how population can increase rapidly under certain conditions. Okay, now what are the resource requirement for exponential growth? Okay, so resources, they play a crucial role in determining how a population can grow. Without the necessary resources, growth cannot be sustained. Okay. Now, if there is unlimited food supply, if there is unlimited space, then the growth will be exponential. So, unlimited food and space is needed for unimpeded growth. So, the population will increase rapidly when resources are unlimited, when the space is unlimited, there is no competition. Now, this concept is based on observations from Darwin's theory of natural selection. So Darwin noted that in nature, organisms tend to produce more offerings that can survive. Okay, leading to competition for the resources. So this observation is key to understanding why populations can grow exponentially under the ideal conditions. Okay. Finally, let's look at how the population grows in exponential or geometric fashion. So this means that the population size increases at a constant rate per time period, leading to a rapid rise in the numbers. Now it's important to recognize how quickly populations can expand when conditions are favorable. Okay, now let's talk about the mathematical expression of the exponential growth. So this will help us understand the dynamics of population growth and decline. Okay, first we have the population size denoted by n. So this represents the total number of individuals in a population at a given time. Now it's important to keep track of this number as it forms the basis of our calculations. Okay. Now, B means per capita birth rate. Okay, this rate tells us how many new individuals are added to the population per individual per unit time. Okay, then we have the D, which is per capita death rate. So this rate indicates how many individuals are lost from the population per individual per unit time. Okay. Now let's look at the change in the population size over time. So the equation dn by dt is equal to b minus d into n. This shows how the population size changes. Here dn by dt represents the rate of change of the population size and b minus d is the net growth rate. Okay, this equation is fundamental in population ecology. Here b minus d is equal to r. And R is the intrinsic rate of natural increase. Okay, clear? So you can see here R is the intrinsic rate of natural increase. Now what do you mean by R? So R is the population's potential growth rate. Okay, in ideal conditions. Clear? Or under ideal conditions. Okay, clear? So it is the intrinsic rate of natural increase. Okay, it is very important parameter for assessing growth factors. Therefore, dn by dt can be written as r into n because r is equal to b minus d. Now let's take some examples of r values. Suppose for Norway rat, R value is 0.015. So what does this indicate? So this relatively low R value indicates a slower rate of population increase compared to other organisms. Okay, next, flower beetle, R is 0.12. So this higher R value suggests a much faster rate of population growth. So flower beetles, they reproduce quickly and in large numbers, which is typical for organisms with high R values. So this is an example of a strategy focused on rapid reproduction. Now look at the India's human population in 1981, which had an R value of 0.0205. So this value is higher than that of the Norway rat but lower than that of the flower beetle, reflecting a moderate growth rate. Human population often have complex growth dynamics influenced by various factors, including social and economic conditions. Okay, now let's talk about the exponential growth equation. Okay, so this is a fundamental model in population biology that describes how population can grow rapidly under ideal conditions. Clear? So the exponential growth equation is NT, which is equal to N naught ERT. So this equation helps us calculate the population density at any given time, assuming exponential growth is occurring, means rapid growth is occurring. Okay, you can notice here each component of the equation plays a crucial role in determining the outcome. So here you can see NT is equal to population density at time t. Okay, N0 is the population density at time 0. Here the R stands for the intrinsic rate of natural increase. R we have already discussed. It is the population's potential growth rate under ideal conditions. Then E, it is the base of natural logarithm whose value is 2.71828. Okay. Now, what are the characteristics of this growth pattern? So it results in a J-shaped curve when plotting N against the time. Okay, what is N here? N is the population density. Okay, so you get a J-shaped curve here. When you plot population density or population size against the time. So this curve indicates exponential growth, where the population size increases rapidly over time. Now, the population can reach enormous population density quickly. Clear? Means there is a rapid increase. Yeah, there is a rapid increase in the population. Okay, this rapid increase in population, this exponential growth occurs under unlimited resource condition, when the resources are unlimited, when the space is available and there is no competition. Okay, now let's talk about population growth examples and types. Clear? So let's understand this. Okay, so one classical example of exponential growth is illustrated by the chess game anecdote. Okay, this is an example of exponential growth. So this story helps us visualize how quickly numbers can escalate when growth is unchecked. Okay, this is clear. Let's understand this anecdote. Okay, now the king and the minister sat for a chess game. The king was very confident of winning the game. Clear? And he was able to accept any bet proposed by the minister. So the minister humbly said that if he won, he wanted only some wheat grains, the quantity of which is to be calculated by placing on the chessboard 1 grain in 1 square. Okay, then 2 in square 2, and then 4 in square 3, 8 in 4 square 4, and so on. Okay, so what was minister bet? He said you have to place 1 grain in square 1, then double grains in each subsequent square. Okay, so here you can see doubling effect. Okay, so doubling effect is a hallmark of the exponential growth, where each step builds significantly on the previous one. Okay, so he said continue this for the 64 squares. Now, king realized after some time, okay, what does he realized? So king realization was that by half the chessboard, king's entire wheat production was insufficient. Okay, so this highlights the surprising nature of the exponential growth. Okay, so king's entire wheat production was even insufficient. This was because of the exponential growth. So this demonstrates the power of the exponential growth. Here the number they increase rapidly, doubling at each step, leading to massive quantities in a short time. Another example is paramecium example. This is a biological example. Paramecium is a single cell organism. This provides a real world illustration of exponential growth in the nature. Now, paramecium doubles its population through a process called binary fission. This means each organism splits into two, showing how quickly population can grow under ideal conditions. Okay, clear. So in just 64 days, a single paramecium can lead to an enormous population. Okay, so this example underscores the potential for rapid growth when conditions are favorable. Now, this rapid growth is only possible in unlimited food. When unlimited food is available and space is available, there is no competition. Now, let's talk about another growth model, which is logistic growth. Logistic growth is the realistic growth. This is observed in nature. Okay. Now, resources are always limited in an ecosystem, in an area. Okay, so this prevents exponential growth. So in nature, resources such as food, water, and space, they are limited, which means that population can't grow indefinitely. And this is a crucial concept because it explains why we don't see unlimited growth in natural population. Now, as the resources are limited, there are competition. There is competition among the individuals. Okay, the individual must compete for the resources. So this competition can be for food, for mates, for territory, and it plays a significant role in shaping the population dynamics. This shows us the principle of survival of the fittest. So in a competitive environment, individuals that are better adapted to their surroundings are more likely to survive and reproduce. Okay, so this natural selection process is a key driver of evolution and biodiversity. Okay, now let's consider the role of government recognition. Now, in many cases, government recognize the need to manage the population growth to prevent overexploitation of the resources. Our resources are limited, so we have to control the population. Okay, so this involves implementing policies and regulations to ensure sustainable use of the natural resources. Okay, so population control measures are implemented and restraints are introduced. So these measures can include things like hunting regulations, protected areas, and conservation programs. The goal is to maintain a balance between population growth and resource availability, ensuring the long-term health of the ecosystem. Now let's talk about the carrying capacity. Okay, carrying capacity is symbolized as K. It represents the maximum number of individuals that a habitat can support sustainably. Okay, it is the maximum population limit in a habitat. Maximum population of a species that a habitat, you can say, can support. Okay, it is the maximum population limit that a habitat can sustain. Okay, so carrying capacity is determined by the available resources in the habitat. So this includes food, water, shelter, and other necessities. If resources are abundant, carrying capacity will be higher. But if resources are scarce, carrying capacity is lower. Carrying capacity acts as a natural growth constraint for the populations. It prevents populations from growing indefinitely, ensuring that they remain in balance with the resources available in their environment. Okay, let's talk about the logistic growth phases. So there are some phases in the logistic growth curve. Okay, or there are some phases in the logistic growth. What are these phases? Okay, so logistic growth, this is the more realistic model because resources are always limited. First phase is the initial lag phase. Yeah, so in the lag phase, okay, very slow growth is taking place. Okay, then you have the acceleration phase. Here the population starts to grow rapidly as more individuals are reproducing. Okay, so first is the lag phase where the organisms, they are adjusting to the environment, they are reproducing very slowly, their growth is slow. Then you have the acceleration phase. Then is the deceleration phase. So in this phase, the growth rate slows down as the population approaches the carrying capacity. Okay. Then you have the asymptote phase. Asymptote means the population has stabilized. Okay, here the population stabilizes because carrying capacity has achieved. Here the population size levels off as the number of birth equals the number of the deaths. Okay, that's why the population is stable. Okay, clear? So here in logistic growth curve, you get sigmoidal curve. Okay, so this curve is very important because it shows how population grows rapidly at first, then slows down as they approach a limit. Okay, this is also known as Verhulst's pearl logistic growth. Okay, it is named after the scientists who developed this model. Now, this term is crucial because it distinguishes this realistic model from other growth models that might not account for the limiting factors. Okay, this is represented by the equation dn by dt is equal to Rn k minus n divided by k. Okay, so this is the equation for logistic growth curve. Okay, clear? For exponential growth curve, what is the equation? For exponential growth curve, you have the equation dn by dt is equal to Rn. And for logistic growth curve, where you get the sigmoidal curve, equation is dn by dt is equal to Rn k minus n divided by k. Okay, clear? So when you plot a graph between population density and time, okay, for exponential growth, you will get a J-shaped curve. For logistic growth, you will get a sigmoidal curve. And the equations are also different for both of them. Logistic curve includes the carrying capacity. Okay, here n represents the population density, T represents the time, R represents the growth rate, and K represents the carrying capacity. Now, logistic growth model is considered more realistic for the animal population. Okay, it is more realistic in the nature because resources are always limited. Okay, in real world ecosystem, factors like food, space, and mates, they become limiting as the population grows. Okay, let's talk about life history variation now. Okay, so first let's talk about population evolution and fitness. Here now the population evolved to maximize reproductive fitness, or Darwinian fitness means they have higher R value. So this means the population, they aim for a high reproductive rate, often refers to as a high R value. Okay, so Darwinian fitness means the organism is able to leave more offerings. It is able to produce more offerings. Clear? Now you can notice how this is a key driver in the evolution of a species, as it directly impacts their ability to survive and thrive. Now evolution doesn't happen in a vacuum. It's influenced by habitat-specific selection pressure. So this means that environment plays a significant role in shaping the evolutionary path of a population. Okay, so there are a lot of selection pressures in the habitat, in the ecosystem where the organisms are living. And these organisms, they are adapting to these changes in the environment. Okay, they are adapting to these selection pressures. Okay, and the organisms which are able to adapt to these changes, okay, they survive and they leave offerings. Okay, or the traits which give survival advantage, these traits are selected by the nature. Okay, so evolution occurs because of the selection pressures which are present in the habitat. Okay, organism, they develop the most efficient reproductive strategies for their environment. So what does this mean? So this is a very fascinating aspect of biology because it shows the incredible adaptability of the life. For example, some species might reproduce quickly and in large numbers while others invest more in fewer offerings. Okay, now let's talk about the breeding patterns. So first is the single breeding. These organisms, they are known as semmelparous. What do you mean by semmelparous organism? They breed only once, but they produce large quantity of the offerings. For example, Pacific salmon, fish, and bamboo. So these species, they reproduce once in their lifetime, often producing large number of offerings. Okay. Now, second one is etiopares, which is multiple breeding strategy. Here, so here the organism breed multiple times, but they produce fewer offerings. Examples are mouse, bird, and mammals. So this strategy allows them to spread the risk over several reproductive events because they are breeding multiple times. And this can be advantageous in stable environment. Clear? So these strategies, they reflect the diverse ways life has evolved to ensure survival. So all these strategies have evolved as a survival strategy. Okay, these strategies evolved in a particular environment. Okay, so this helped that organism to survive in that environment. Okay, now let's talk about offering strategy variation. Okay, so some species like oysters and pelagic fishes produce large number of small-sized offerings. So this strategy is often used in environments where the survival rate of each individual is low. So producing many offerings increases the chances that some will survive. Clear? Now, some organisms such as birds and mammals produce small number of large-sized offerings. So this approach allows parents to invest more resources and care into each offerings, increasing their chances of survival in the environment where competition is high or resources are limited. Okay, clear? Now, what are the evolutionary factors that influence these reproductive strategies? Okay, so life history traits, they evolve based on what? So they evolve based on abiotic habitat constraint and biotic habitat constraint. Abiotic constraints include non-living environmental factors like temperature, water availability, and habitat space. And biotic constraints involve interactions with other living organisms such as competition, predation, and symbiotic relationship. And together, these factors influence the evolution of reproductive strategies in different species. Okay, now let's summarize this entire lecture. Okay, we talk about the growth models, exponential and the logistic growth model. Okay, so population growth follows either exponential, where you get the J-shaped curve, or logistic, where you get the S-shaped curve. Okay, with the latter means with the logistic model being more realistic as the resources are always limited and carrying capacity constraints. Now, the intrinsic rate of natural increase, which is R, is crucial parameter for measuring population growth, okay, varying across the species. Okay, so it is a crucial parameter that help us measure how fast a population can grow under ideal condition. This R value varies across species, reflecting their unique reproductive strategies and environmental adaptations. Okay, some species are semmelparous, meaning they reproduce once and then they die, while others are etioparous, reproducing multiple times throughout their life. Okay, additionally, some organisms produce many small offerings, while others produce fewer but larger offerings. Okay, now we also talked about the mathematical models like dn by dt is equal to rn. This equation is for the exponential growth, and dn by dt is equal to rn k minus n by k. This is for the logistic growth model. Okay, where K is the carrying capacity. So these models are essential tools for analyzing how population grow and interact with their environment. Now let's discuss some NCERT based questions. Okay, so first question is, which of the following best represent the equation for exponential growth? Okay, so you have these four options. You have to select the correct answer from these options. Let's have a look at the answer. Option number B is the correct answer. dN by dt is equal to Rn. Okay, where dN by dt represents the rate of change of the population. R is the intrinsic rate of natural increase. Okay, this is a measure of how quickly a population can grow under ideal conditions, where no limiting factor is present. N is the population size. Okay, so this equation shows that population growth is proportional to the existing population size, which is characteristic of the exponential growth. Okay, so it is important to understand that this type of growth assumes unlimited resources, which isn't always realistic in nature. However, this model is useful for understanding potential growth patterns. Next question, in the context of life history patterns, Pacific salmon exhibit. Options are ETO, parity, seminal parity, multiple breeding cycles, and continuous reproduction. What is the correct answer? Let's have a look at the answer. See, option number B, seminal parity is the correct answer. Okay, let's have a look at the explanation. See, so Pacific salmon, these are known for their seminal pairs breeding pattern, meaning they have a single reproductive event in their lifetime. They only breed once and then they die. Now, these organisms reproduce only once in their lifetime and then die, as opposed to Ethioparus organism, which breeds multiple times during their lifetime. The next question, the logistic growth curve is characterized by options only lag phase, J-shaped curve, sigmoidal or S-shaped curve, or linear growth patterns. What is the correct answer? Let's have a look at the answer. Option number C, sigmoidal or S-shaped curve is the right answer. Okay, so this shape is significant because it reflects how population grow in a real world settings where resources are limited. And the logistic growth curve is also known as virtual Pearl logistic curve, logistic growth, and it shows a S-shaped pattern or sigmoidal pattern. So this curves includes initial lag phase, where the population grows slowly because it is just beginning to establish itself. It is adjusting to the conditions. Then is the acceleration phase. During this phase, the population grows rapidly as resources are abundant and conditions are favorable. Next is the deceleration phase. Okay, here the population is approaching carrying capacity. Resources have become limited. The population start declining, and then you get the asymptote phase, where the population stabilizes at the carrying capacity has been achieved. Okay. Now this pattern is more realistic for natural population as it accounts for resource limitation and carrying capacity. Now let's discuss some keynotes. Now the population growth can be represented by two main patterns, exponential and the logistic growth patterns or the growth models. Where in exponential you get the J-shaped curve, and there and you get the J-shaped curve, or you get the exponential growth when the resources are unlimited. Okay, in logistic growth you get the S-shaped curve. Okay, because you take into consideration carrying capacity here and the resources are limited here. Now the growth rate can be expressed as dN by dt is equal to Rn. This is the equation for the exponential growth, where R is the intrinsic rate of natural increase. You can give the example of Norway rat and the human population growth in India. Now life history strategies vary between species, organisms. They can be seminal pairs or they can be etioparous. Seminal pairs mean they breed only once. Ethioparous organism, they breed multiple times like bird and mammals. And a large number of small offerings. Okay, some organisms produce large number of small offerings, whereas some organisms produce few large offerings. Okay, means few number but large offerings. We also talk about the carrying capacity. It represents the maximum sustainable population in a habitat, limited by available resources and expressed in the logistic growth equation. dn by dt is equal to rn k minus n by k. Here k is the carrying capacity. Now there are some interesting questions for you. You have to analyze this question. Okay, you have to critically analyze these questions. The first question is: the population of bacteria doubles every 20 minutes. So bacteria, they can reproduce very fast. Okay, they can divide very fast. Okay, so a population of bacteria doubles every 20 minutes under ideal laboratory conditions. If this population started with 100 bacteria and followed perfect exponential growth, how many bacteria would be present after 3 hours? Okay, then you have to explain why this theoretical number is rarely achieved in nature, connecting your answer to both logistic growth constraint and life history strategies. Next question: a species showing the following unusual pattern. When population density is very low, it exhibits logistic growth, but when population reaches 50% of carrying capacity, it switches to exponential growth until resources are depleted. You have to create a mathematical model that could describe this growth pattern, and you have to explain what evolutionary advantages, if any, this strategy might provide. So you have to analyze these questions critically. Okay, so with this, we have discussed the theory. Now let's discuss the DPP related to these topics. Okay, let's begin with the first question. The first question is: which of the following best defines Darwinian fitness in the context of life history variations? The first question is the physical strength of an organism to survive in harsh environment. Next is the ability of an organism to produce offerings that survive and reproduce. Next is the lifespan of an organism relative to others in the population. And last option is the number of times an organism breeds during its lifetime. What is the correct answer? Here, option number B is the correct answer here. Darwinian fitness basically means the organism is able to produce more number of offerings. Okay, these offerings, they will survive and then they will reproduce. They will produce more number of offerings. Okay, Darwinian fitness means reproductive fitness. Clear? Next one: Pacific salmon, fish, and bamboo are examples of organisms that exhibit. First is etioparity, means they have multiple reproductive events. They breed multiple times. Next one, similparity, means single reproductive event, means they breed only once and then they die. Next is case selection, which is few large offerings. And last one is high parental care after reproduction. What is the correct answer? Okay, the correct answer is option number B, similparity. So Pacific salmon, fish, and bamboo, they're example of organism that exhibit similparity, means they breed only once, but they produce large quantity of the offerings. Okay, and then they die. They breed only once. Next, which of the following life history trait is most likely to evolve in an unstable, unpredictable environment? The options are large offering size with high parental investment. Then next option, low reproductive rate with long gestation periods. Next one, high number of small size offering with minimum parental care. And option number D, delayed reproduction until late in life. So what is the correct answer here? Okay, here the correct answer is option number C, high number of small size offerings with the minimum parental care. Okay, so this is basically our selection strategy. Clear? And this maximizes the reproductive output. Clear? By producing, you can say, large number of small size offerings, it ensures the survivability of the offerings. That at least some of the offerings will survive in that environment. Next one, the evolution of life history trait is primarily influenced by. The options are only abiotic factors like temperature and rainfall. Abiotic factors mean non-living factors. Then next option is only biotic factors like competition and predation. So biotic factors means the living, you can say, factors. Next one is both biotic and abiotic constraints of the habitat. And the last option, random genetic mutations with no environmental influence. What is the correct answer? The correct answer is option number C, both abiotic and biotic constraint of the habitat. Okay, so abiotic constraints are the non-living factors in the environment. Okay, means the temperature and the environmental conditions there. Biotic constraint is about the predation and the competition. Okay, so life history traits are influenced by both biotic and the abiotic constraints of the habitat. Next question, which statement about case selected species is correct? The options are they typically produce many small offerings with low survival rate. Next one, they thrive in rapidly changing environment. Option number third is they exhibit high parental care and fewer large offerings. And last one, they prioritize early reproduction over longevity. What is the correct answer? Okay, option number C is the correct answer here. So case selection, okay, means the organism is producing fewer but larger offerings, and they exhibit high parental care, okay, which ensures survival of the offerings. Option number C is the correct answer here. Okay, so with this, we have discussed the DPP as well. Clear? So with this, we will end this session. I hope this session was quite knowledgeable for you. We'll meet you in the next session. Thank you very much for listening.